apparent to me that they knew a lot more about the shell companies and the tax evasion and the wire fraud than we ever could have imagined. Obviously, since nothing was ever done about that, there are a lot of questions there. We're going to give the whistleblowers the opportunity to tell us what crimes they felt like the Bidens committed.
That was Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer with me on this program earlier this morning. 2 IRS whistleblowers are testifying today in front of the Oversight Committee, detailing preferential treatment for the Biden family throughout the years-long federal investigation into Hunter Biden. Gary Shapley is one of those whistleblowers, and we will soon learn the identity of whistleblower X. Joining me right now is the attorney for IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley. Mark Lytle is here. Mark, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being with me.
Thanks very much, Maria. Really appreciate being on your show today. Thanks.
What does Mr. Shapley want to share? Tell us what you're expecting him to communicate.
Well, Agent Shapley, he could not sleep at night if he didn't come forward and tell about the facts of this case. And as you know, October 7th, 2022, when U.S. Attorney Weiss told him and other executives from the FBI and the IRS that he was not the deciding person on whether charges were to be brought against Hunter Biden. That was his red line meeting, and he felt he would never live with himself if he didn't come forward after that. And so you and the American public are going to hear him and the line agent from the IRS testify today about the facts surrounding that, and he'll be cross-examined by Democrats and Republicans, but the American public will weigh his credibility. And I think he's believable and credible.
So what kind of pressure is he facing right now, Mark? I know that there's an effort to try to quiet this down. I mean, in the middle, on the day that a reporter was testifying about what happened with the FBI and Twitter, they showed up at his house from the IRS. That's Matt Taibbi. What kind of pressure has Mr. Shapley been faced with?
Well, he's been isolated at the IRS. He's still a supervisor of an elite squad of international agents who are really good at what they do, 12 agents. But his supervisory structure has basically ignored him. He hasn't even talked to his supervisor in 6 weeks, despite trying to reach out and update all the ongoing cases he has. So he's been retaliated against, and he continues to be isolated. But he's strong, and he wants to come forward. And he understands that this was part of the risk of going forward.
I mean, he had access to all sorts of information. And, of course, you know that the Oversight Committee has been stonewalled. They're trying to get more bank statements. They're trying to understand why the Biden family had set up 20 shell companies and were accepting money from foreign nationals. And then that money was going to these shell companies and then distributed to Biden family members. What kind of data has Mr. Shapley seen to indicate this influence peddling scheme that was underway?
Well, I mean, he's seen a lot of data that came across during the investigation, but one of the big problems is that every time some investigative step was proposed that naturally led to Joe Biden or some other foreign influence, they were stymied by the prosecutors. They were told they couldn't take that step, and that was frustrating for them.
So, I mean, does he believe that this was David Weiss getting in the way or the Department of Justice getting ahead of David Weiss? We're trying to understand who's misleading the American people here, because Merrick Garland continues to say, oh, no, they had full authority to do whatever they needed to do.
Well, the agents, including Agent Shapley, always had faith in the public statements made by Attorney General Garland as early as April of 2022, when he said that Weiss has the authority as a Trump appointee. They always point out that talking point. As a Trump appointee, Weiss has the authority to bring the charges wherever and whenever he wants. And, you know, they always had faith in that. But on October 7th, 2022, Weiss stood up at this meeting with executives from the FBI and the IRS watching, taking notes. And Weiss said he's not the deciding person on this, whether charges get brought, and that he had tried to bring the case into D.C. at the U.S. Attorney's Office there with a Biden appointee, and he was declined, and that he had tried to be appointed a special counsel so he could charge there or in other places, and he was declined. And so Gary Shapley, who was shocked, actually asked him to repeat it because he couldn't believe it. They always had faith in what the Attorney General was publicly saying. And then here on this day, privately, up at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware, you hear the opposite. And that was a shock to the agents.
Well, one thing that I've been noting is how is it possible that the IRS could look to prosecute on no taxes paid, or the DOJ prosecute, obviously, no taxes paid on income, but the IRS doesn't look at where that income came from? What does Mr. Shapley know about all of this income coming from foreigners into Biden family accounts?
Well, they have it traced out, and the line agent and Agent Shapley, you'll hear them testify and answer questions about that today. But the short answer is they know a lot, and in fact, there's a number of documents and exhibits that have already been released to the public. It's a lot of information, hasn't really been fully digested by the public. But in there, I'll point to Exhibit 2 from Gary Shapley's House Ways and Means transcribed interview, is the special agent's report. That is a significant document in tax investigations. And that is the culmination of work of an entire investigation. And in there, you'll see the conclusion, which was backed by the lead AUSA, Leslie Wolf, and the tax division attorneys. And they supported charging felony tax evasion, felony false income tax returns, and other charges for 2014 all the way through 2019. And that included 14 and 15, which is a significant amount of income coming from Burisma and a significant amount of income coming from the Chinese energy company.
Unbelievable. And of course, the FBI allowed the statute of limitations to run up on 2014 and 15 by slow walking all of this. We'll hear more today at that hearing. Mark, great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us. This is so important to the American people, and we hope that Mr. Shapley will join me soon. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Maria.